Greetings from the heart of the Springer Triangle, and Happy New Year to all, except for my neighbour Dale. Horses do not belong in the kitchen, Dale. At least get some curtains. Well, before I get on to my bizarre summary tour of misery that has become my milieu, I thought it'd be nice to do something positive, just this once. Abiotic Factor is an indie game that does so much right in opposition to the priorities of AAA games that I thought it was worth talking about here. So, it's 1993 and you're a soup-obsessed scientist on your first day at work at Black Mes Cascade Research Facility. What could go wrong?
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes began an eerie sight from a monster from his slab began to rise and then settle to rise and rise. He took an arms to
Abiotic Factor is a sci-fi horror survival crafting game for 1 to 6 players, taking place mostly deep underground in Australia in a totally ethical and secure scientific research facility, which is mostly concerned with opening portals to other dimensions to procure weird and dangerous shit. Obviously influenced by Half-Life as well as the SCP Foundation community, itself inspired by Lovecraft, Abiotic Factor is nevertheless very much its own thing. You, as a scientist or group of scientists, have to get out of the gate facility, sector by sector, by yourself procuring things to help you craft gizmos that might help you open doors, shoot grinder discs, or get a good night's sleep, while avoiding ravenous monsters, trigger-happy soldiers, and sentient cans of paint. It's not unlike other crafting survival games, where you need to keep an eye on things like how hungry you are, how warm, cold, or irradiated you are, or how close you are to sharting your hazmat suit. It's a bit different to most other games of the genre, in that you don't craft a shelter, as you're almost always inside, but you rather pick a place, maybe several places, to set up shop. Anywhere you like, although some places are obviously safer than others. There, you can farm, cook, mend and tinker with your gear, decorate, brew the all-important soup, or do only the minimal amount of this and live like a lab-coated hobo, hopping from water coolers to vending machines and hiding in the toilets at night. But the base building, as fun as it is really to facilitate exploration, and exploration ultimately facilitates access to the next set of resources you might find in boxes or inside of unfortunate NPCs that are needed to progress and achieve your ultimate goal of uncovering the mystery of what the hell is happening and really getting back to the surface and away from all those terrible, terrible things down there. Those reasons combined create something that feels antithetical to many modern AAA efforts. I'm thinking Starfield here, even though it's not of the same genre, but more on that later. The way Abiotic Factor's map has been built sees the players go back and forth from one part of the facility to the other, often retracing their steps. But considered design allows intersection traversal to be very quick. A nearby door you've been walking past for the last 20 hours suddenly becomes not just a shortcut, but your primary mode of access. Rather than reused interiors or procedurally generated slop, it's all handcrafted. There are no dead ends with nothing to find, and no schlep through reiterations of the same thing over and over. I've gone through the office foyer 100 times without resenting it. With the deliberate lack of a live map, magic trail to follow, or constant voice in my ear, it's not a chore because I know that part of the facility like the back of my hand, and because even then, the enemies level with the sectors you unlock, so that even the safe-ish early areas are never really safe, even when you're climbing the skill tree. Even a boring old water run manages to not be a grind because you're always leveling something. Sprinting, strength, If you're like me and enjoy falling off balconies, Fortitude. Because many things, like filtering water or travelling from one important place to another, gradually become easier while new challenges are introduced, it feels very much like while being a time sink, the game respects my time. The map, the skill tree, and the incrementally increasing difficulty do very well in balancing themselves so as not to be tedious or frustrating, all while adding creatively thought out new challenges and other problems that aren't merely a case of the same baddies with bigger health bars. I think this constant progression with lack of grind is probably Abiotic Factor's core triumph. It's not by any means the only thing it does very well, but I think it's the most important to how the other successful facets play out. In a sentence, I'm playing this game and I'm like, this is so weird. It's like the developers don't hate me. It's like they haven't put in a load of bullshit mechanics to string out hours played time to get high up on the Steam rankings, and they actually like their own game. 2 sentences. Science! It manages to be big, and it is big, deceptively big from the office's small beginning, but without any fat. Everything you can collect has a purpose somewhere, and can be used to craft some very creative and fun gadgets. Everywhere you go has something new to collect, flee from, or see. Every audio log and email is actually worth reading, not just because they add flavour, which they do, but because some of the information can actually be very useful, such as where things might be, or what certain entities might be vulnerable to. Again, to contrast this to Starfield, which I didn't hate, but having recently gone back to it after its big update, I feel fairly disappointed by. There's no busy work. There's no drawn-out sequence to do something mundane. There's no NPCs asking you to get them coffee from across the galaxy. And probably more important than that, the developer's attention is on gameplay. They could have spent years animating the crouching motions, or giving sandwiches detailed textures like you've never before seen. But the retro aesthetic works perfectly well, and even contributes to something else that was lacking in Starfield. Oh my, I'm on it today. The game is full of atmosphere, and indeed tension. This is helped by a lack of quick save, but it's more the considered level design, new and downright creepy enemies turning up in previously explored locations, and great use of light and sound. With so much going on, it can be unpredictable, and there are lots of developments I did not expect. All this with notes of humour, actually funny humour, from the player-scientist's declarations of impending bowel movements, to sentient and hopefully benign vending machines, to our good friend Toby, crawling around on all fours, begging for food, and maintaining an optimistic culture in the office.
Hey, if you're tired, feel free to lay down. I won't tell the boss. Hey, here's your stapler back. Oh, I love coffee in my coffee hole.
The game also has things to say, and although its themes of greed at the expense of, well, possibly everything, are clear, they're never shoved in your face. I think it's also worth noting that although the researchers at Gate obviously are playing with fire, the element of corporate interference is left on the back burner. Rather than just profit eclipsing morals or even reason, it's seemingly the pursuit of knowledge for knowledge's sake, and for ego, that the game focuses on as its core are we the baddies moral crux.
But if I must choose, I'd rather be cruel than wrong.
As of writing this, I have about 75 hours in Abiotic Factor, and I have not completed the story it has, and it's still in early access, with a large update due to come out in February. Having only discovered it in the later half of December, it's now one of my favourite games of all time, and maybe my favourite survival crafting game, maybe sharing that place with Subnautica. I'm certainly not saying all games should be like this, but at near a third of the price of AAA games, with clearly so much more passion for the project from the developers of titles like, yes, yet again, Starfield, I have to say that it puts at least some of them to absolute shame. Well, there you go. I have to imagine that part of Abiotic Factor's success is because it was made by a small studio where, just guessing here, they probably wanted to make a game that they themselves would want to play. You can almost feel the absence of hierarchical committees at play. Good job. Thanks very much for joining me. I do have a Patreon if you've got any spare money lying around, and, I love eating and paying my electric bill. Oh, it's back. Well, I have to look this way, so I'll see you next time. Christina, get the X-ray gun. Hurry. This isn't macaroni.